Tolhurst Creative. Wes Tolhurst served as a pastor and youth director for 20 years and then went on to pursue one of his passions, to make films. In 2016, he became the founder of Tolhurst Creative, a film and creative production company based on the Gold Coast, Australia. He has worked for ADRA International, the South Pacific Division in places as far as PNG, the Middle East, India, and much more. Please welcome Wes Tolhurst.
Good morning. How often do we get to sit in a room full of creatives? What a pleasure this is, right? Just to be with the family. Did you notice the one that's organising all of this, Charmaine? Let's give her a little hand. Did you notice that she's running around doing what? Taking pictures, doing what she loves. We always find a way to do that creative thing if that's the thing that God's put in our hearts. So I want to talk to you a little bit about storytelling today. Last time I talked to you about storytelling was 3 years ago, and we talked a lot about the structure of storytelling. But the more I tell stories and get that privilege, I'm learning some more things down along the road, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. We've just got a short moment, and I want to make 4 very brief points. And the first one is that every person has a remarkable story. Luke chapter 12 says, "The very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not be afraid." When God looks down on this room, He knows all of us intimately. Every little detail. Every little detail is important if you're going to tell a powerful story. It's not so much the big things, but the small things that will connect with your viewers. But when God looks on this room and He sees all of us, do you think He sees some people that have a more remarkable story than someone else? Or do you think He sees a room full of people that have incredible stories? So the first thing I really want to say to you is every person has a remarkable story. We've had the privilege of interviewing all sorts of different kinds of people, some celebrities, some people that you've never heard of, and I can't get this to work. Sorry, Julie. Which one will I press there? Some poor people, some rich people, people in different places. You probably didn't even know there was a Samaritan high priest, right? There is. There still is. This old guy was 95, Ray, in our local church. Every person has the most remarkable story. You've just got to be good enough to listen, and to listen well. The second point I want to make is that to tell a story well, you need a posture of humility. Matthew 19, verse 14, Jesus said, "Let the little children come." Do you think that they would have come to Jesus if they didn't trust Him, if they didn't feel safe with Him, to come and be themselves, to come and sit on His knee? This guy's name is Primo. And I was on my way home from a cancelled job because of the floods down in the North New South Wales coast. And I couldn't go up the freeway, so I was so annoyed. I had to go through Lismore. And as I started to drive through Lismore and see the devastation from the floods there, I couldn't really drive through without stopping. And I didn't have my work overalls on me that day or anything. I didn't really have anything to offer, but I just felt compelled that God wanted me to tell some of this story. And so I started walking around. Now, how do you think I should have introduced myself to the people who were walking around picking up the scraps of their lives? I just got as small as I could, really, and gingerly introduced myself and asked them if I could tell some of their stories. This guy lost everything. He's been there for 30 years. This guy's name's Jerry, moved from Korea a year ago and bought this place, a restaurant, fully set it up with everything, all his life savings, and then the flood came through and wiped it all out. There's a famous Australian photographer who was the world's #1 wedding photographer a few years ago. His name's Jonas Peterson. And he said to me once, when I go into a house to start photographing the bride getting ready, the first thing I'll do is I won't walk into the house with my camera bag. I'll leave it outside because cameras make people nervous, right? Anyone else relate to that? So I'll leave it outside. And he's a tall guy. He's about the same height as me. And so he said, I walk into the house and I want to make myself as small as possible. So after meeting everybody, the first thing I'll do is sit down and make myself smaller. And then, because I want people to trust me, I want them to learn to be ready to share their stories and their intimate moments with me in getting ready for their wedding. Posture of humility. Being willing to listen, really listen. The fourth point I want to make here is to take risks. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. If you really believe that every person has a remarkable story, and you are really willing to listen to that story, then that remarkable story will come out. What's next? Now, I'm probably going to say something that your mum and dad would not like at this point. In storytelling, take risks. We're not just telling stories because it's a fun thing to do. If you're engaged in working for the kingdom, as everybody who's a Christian should be, then our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not just doing something for the sake of it. You're not telling a story because it's a fun thing. You're telling stories because they have the power to change the world. They have the power to change culture. It's the arts that change culture. If God has called you to be a creative, then I'm saying to you, take risks. This guy is down a mine shaft in the Philippines. Lives in a village where a landslide came down and wiped out 67 people. And he's working in an illegal mine shaft because the locals can't get the permits that they need. And I pushed and pushed and pushed to find a mine where they would let me go in and film what's actually happening. You can't really see it in the projector there, but his little train carriage thing that he rolls up and down here from the bowels of the earth is covered in green, and it's got cyanide, it's got sulfur, it's got silver. There's all sorts of dangerous metals down this tunnel. As I went 50 metres down into the tunnel and saw him coming up, crazy life these guys are living, but I really wanted to tell a story. Take risks. And the last moment in our brief time together is be in the moment. John 3 verse 8. The wind blows wherever it pleases. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. When you start to tell a story, obviously you will have an idea in your own mind about what the story is going to be. Even after spending a little bit of time with a person you might be interviewing or listening to their story, you start to get an idea in your head. And I was in PNG doing a story here, and it was kind of going okay, but there was stuff happening outside that just happened to be happening while I was in Port Moresby, and it was Independence Day. And I wouldn't condone walking down the streets of PNG as a Westerner without some locals with you that know the scene and what's going on. And so they were willing to come with me as I went out into the streets. And I got to know some of the excitement of what was happening in the streets. And Some of the footage that I got from that moment, being out among the people, it wasn't planned, it wasn't on the roster, it wasn't what I had in my head originally to be part of the story, but it certainly became some of the most iconic images that have been used in our stories that we've told for P&G since. So be in the moment and be willing to respond to the Spirit when the Spirit shows you something is happening that you might not have planned, but they can be some of the key moments that can really bring your story alive. So every person has a remarkable story. Take a posture of humility, take risks, and be in the moment. God bless you as you tell stories. And I'll just leave you with a little story we got the privilege of telling from India. Thanks.
My name is Parul, which means beautiful and flower. I am 13 years old and I love to sing and to write music. I live with my family in Tirukandalam village, just outside of Chennai in India. There are about 200 families living here on the edge of the Kosastalai river. I know everyone. Every morning, my parents leave for work before the sun rises. My father works in brick kilns in the heat, and my mother works in the jasmine fields. I carry a great responsibility as the oldest child, as I need to dress and feed my brother and sisters for the day. My parents were bonded laborers, but after the government made that illegal, they resettled us here in this village 10 years ago. They had lived in slavery, unable to pay debts back, working in unsafe conditions. When they were rescued and brought here, we had hopes that things would be different. But after saving money for 7 years to construct a small concrete house, the river flooded in 2015, washing it away and destroying the village. So my parents borrowed 50,000 rupees to restart construction. That was 3 years ago, and we are still living in this mud home. That's why I left school to start working in the jasmine fields with my mother. We earn up to 100 rupees a day. They tell me that's a bit over $1. We will never repay the debt. That was life, as I thought it was going to be. Adra started the school a year ago for school dropouts like me. We already have 21 students with more joining as they hear about it. They pick us up in the yellow bus and provide food and an education. Our teachers tell us that a good education will give me hope to escape bonded labor. Life is still very hard here. But hope is a word I'm starting to believe in again.